What's going on, guys? Aero here, and guys, one thing that I really love about Nintendo is how recently they started coming out with many brand new IPs. I mean, just last month we got a brand new IP from Nintendo because of all of the amazing characters from the world of ARMS, and now all of these characters are also going to be joining the Nintendo family as well, and so I just really like it how Nintendo is deciding to come out with many new IPs, and they're really adding a lot of cool and original characters to the Nintendo family. Now, I think that we can all agree on that there was definitely one game that showed Nintendo that new IPs are a good thing, and that game is Splatoon. So Splatoon was a brand new Wii U game that came out in 2015, and this was definitely a game that a lot of people were concerned about on how it was going to perform, and that's just because Splatoon was Nintendo's newest IP in over 14 years. The last newest IP from Nintendo was Pikmin, and so Splatoon was coming out many years later, and a lot of people didn't know how the game was going to do. But I think after seeing the sales from Splatoon, it really showed Nintendo why new IPs are a great thing, because we all saw the success in Splatoon after it launched. I think it sold like 1 million copies within a month, which is just incredible, and so Splatoon's become a huge hit in Japan. Many people love playing Splatoon, and I think the Inklings are just a really cool and unique character in the Nintendo family. Everybody loves the Inklings. They're in Mario Kart now, people want them in Smash Bros, and so Splatoon has just become a really big part of the Nintendo franchise. And so speaking of Splatoon, I'm sure a lot of you guys are really hyped because Splatoon 2 is just a few days away, and so to make the wait a little less painful for you guys, I thought it would be a cool idea to make a video on 10 things that you probably don't know about Splatoon, and so let's super jump right into it. Starting off this list at number 10, we have ancient Splatoon music. So now if you played through the single player in Splatoon, then you know that in all of the levels that the single player has, you can get a collectible known as the Sunken Scroll. Sunken Scrolls are really cool because they reveal the backstory and history behind many of the characters and the universe of Splatoon. But what's really cool is that if you look at Sunken Scroll number 23, you'll see that in the picture there's actually some sheet music that's shown in there as well. And now what's really interesting is that if you read about it, it talks about how this is like a piece of ancient Splatoon music that pretty much every single Inkling knows. And for those of you who can read music and translate these notes into playing on your instrument, you'll see that the music that's played from the sheet music is actually the theme of the Squid Sisters that plays during the final boss battle in Splatoon. Take a listen for yourself. Next up at number 9 are the splat sounds in Splatoon. So in an interview with the sound composer of Splatoon, Mr. Yuki Tsuji, we were able to learn that many of the sounds that come from when you are splatted in Splatoon were created in real life rather than on a computer. And Mr. Tsuji explained how they really wanted to get that effect of being splatted in Splatoon, and it was hard to do that on a computer and coming up with a sound on the computer, and so they actually got many slimy materials and stuff in the lab, and they pounded them really hard and recorded the sound that came out from that, and then they used those sounds in Splatoon. And I thought that this was just really cool because you would think with all the advanced technology that we have currently, it wouldn't be that hard to create a splatting type of sound effect on a computer, and I thought it was just really cool how they use sound effects from real life in a video game instead of all the advanced technology that we currently have. Now, if I asked you to name an underwater animal that could shoot ink, I'm sure a lot of you guys would probably think of an octopus before you think of a squid, and so did the Splatoon development team. After speaking with the Splatoon development team, many people were able to learn that they were actually considering using octopuses as the main characters of Splatoon, but in the end they decided not to use them. And the reason for this is because they talked about how octopuses have a round head, and so this way it will be a little bit hard to see what direction an octopus is facing because of how the whole body is round. And in the end they decided to use a squid because, as we all know, squids have a pointed head, and so the Splatoon development team talked about how it would be easier to see what direction a squid is facing because of how the pointy head acts like an arrow, and so you can see what direction they're facing or what direction your teammates are facing, and so that's why they decided to use squids as the main characters of Splatoon. Alright, so coming in at number 7 is something really interesting which was said by Mr. Miyamoto. And now in an interview with Mr. Miyamoto about Splatoon, Mr. Miyamoto explained how he thought that the most important thing for Splatoon was making sure that the main characters were really good. And he said that he had a chance to talk with the Splatoon development team, and he told them that if they weren't able to come up with a cool, unique character to use as the main character in Splatoon, that they were allowed to use Mario characters to use in Splatoon as well. And I was so happy to find out that they didn't use Mario characters in Splatoon, because we all know that they could have easily come up with some sort of backstory and used Mario characters. I mean, they have squids in Mario with the bloopers, so they could have just come up with some backstory with like Mario having this mysterious power that allows him to turn into a blooper, and have other Mario characters turning into bloopers and like squirting ink and stuff. They could have easily come up with some sort of backstory and put Mario into Splatoon, but I was so happy that they took the time to come up with some unique characters, being the Inklings. And as we all know, the Inklings are really loved right now, and a lot of people love the Inklings, and they're a really big part of the Nintendo family. So you guys just heard that Octopuses were considered as the main character in Splatoon in its early development, but did you guys know that in even earlier development there was another animal that was considered to be the main character of Splatoon? Believe it or not, but in the very early development of Splatoon, one animal that they were considering using as the final character of Splatoon was a rabbit, and there's actually an early screenshot of it as well, and I'll put it up on screen for you guys right now. And yeah, you guys can see right there that there is a picture of a rabbit holding a splatter shot in Splatoon. And so the Splatoon development team was talking about how they were considering using a rabbit as like the final character in Splatoon, and I thought that this was just really funny, because like, how does it even make sense to have a rabbit that can turn into a squid? But I thought it was just really interesting to see all of the character designs and stuff that they had to go through before they finally ended up creating the Inklings. Alright, so in one of the earlier facts, I was talking a little bit about Sunken Scrolls. So as we all know, Sunken Scrolls have a cool artwork style, and they really talk about the backstory and history about the Splatoon universe. But what's really interesting is that if you look at one of the Sunken Scrolls, you can actually see like some of the consoles and other like games that they have as well. And you guys can see right here in this picture that they show like a Wii U console and like a disc and stuff. That's pretty much like with the human society. But one thing that's really interesting is that if you zoom in, you can actually see that there's a picture of a Wii U Pro controller with like a Wii remote wrapped around it. Now this is really confusing because you don't really see why this would make sense. Like, why would you want to tie a Wii remote to a Wii U Pro controller? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. But what's really interesting is that the Splatoon Tumblr actually updated their site a little bit after Splatoon came out, and we were able to find out that this is actually a cool way of being able to play with motion controls on the 1v1 mode in Splatoon. So if you guys remember the 1v1 mode in Splatoon, it's like the Battle Dojo where you and a friend have to pop the most balloons in like a set amount of time, and one person plays with the gamepad and the other person plays with the Pro controller or some other controller on the TV. But if you're playing with the gamepad, you can have the option to use motion controls, but if you're playing on the TV, you can't really use motion controls. So this was like a cool way of having motion controls, because you would be able to take a Wii remote with like the Motion Plus and kind of connect it with your controller and then use that to tilt around. So that was really cool. I didn't know about that until the Splatoon Tumblr posted about that, and I'm sure a lot of you guys probably didn't know about that mode as well. Alright, next up we have Splatoon Ice Cream. Now in Canada, when Splatoon was still coming out and they were promoting the game, they actually had special flavors of ice cream which were inspired by Splatoon at Yogurtries. And now you guys can see right here that these flavors were available for a limited amount of time, and they had a flavor called Squid Sisters Sorbet, and then they also had a flavor called Inkberry Froyo. And I thought that this was just really cool how they had Splatoon inspired flavors, and it was also really cool because if you bought these flavors, then you had a chance to win a lot of cool Splatoon rewards. They had like Splatoon Amiibo, they were giving away a Wii U with Splatoon. It was just a lot of fun, and I think it was just really cool to see this company get so involved with Splatoon. Now, if you're the type of person who likes to play a lot of ranked modes in Splatoon, then chances are that you've probably played Rainmaker. Now, it's a lot of fun to play Rainmaker, especially when you have the Rainmaker weapon in your hand, because then you can shoot that really powerful amount of ink. Now, if you take a look closely at the Rainmaker weapon, I always thought that it was just like a really big golden fish or something, but what's really interesting is that it's actually based off of an animal called the Sachi Hoko. Now the Sachihoko is a special animal in Japanese folklore, and it has the head of a tiger and the body of a carp. Now if you look at the Rainmaker weapon now, and if you look at this image, you can definitely see how the two relate. And what's really interesting is that in Japanese folklore, the Sachihoko is the animal that would cause the rain to fall. And so now you guys can see why this mode is called Rainmaker, and it makes a lot of sense. So this was definitely something really interesting, and I definitely didn't know about the Sachihoko. Now, if we're talking about Splatoon characters, then I'm sure that two characters that you will all know about if you've played Splatoon are Callie and Marie. And now Callie and Marie are known as the Squid Sisters in Splatoon, and these are the two squids that always give you like news updates whenever there's new stages and stuff. They're also in Splatfest and stuff, so they're really cool characters that are in Splatoon. But what's really interesting is that even though that their names are the Squid Sisters, they're actually not sisters. If you take a look at Sunken Scroll number 17, it actually talks about how these two are related as cousins. And I thought that this was just interesting because I always thought that they were sisters because of how their name is the Squid Sisters, but yeah, it's pretty interesting how they're actually cousins instead. And finally, the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is something really cool in Splatoon 2. Now, even though that Splatoon 2 hasn't come out yet, and so we don't know everything that's hidden inside of it, there's still one thing that I'm sure a lot of you guys don't know about. Now, if you've seen all of the new special weapons that they've shown off for Splatoon 2, then I'm sure that you know that one of these special weapons is called the bomb launcher. And this is basically going to be a launcher that you're going to be able to put on your back, and it's going to be able to make you throw a whole bunch of bombs in different directions. But what's really cool about the bomb launcher is that it's actually based off of a toy that Nintendo had in Japan for little kids. And this was a toy that would allow little kids to practice batting, and it was a really cool launcher that would launch a whole bunch of balls for little kids to bat. And I thought that this was just really cool how they incorporated this toy into Splatoon 2, because you guys can see right here that the designs are perfect with the video. You guys can see it's the same type of design with like the ball coming out and launching it. So I thought that this was just really cool, and it was definitely something that I didn't know. So yeah, there you have it. Those are 10 things that you probably don't know about Splatoon. Definitely be sure to click that like button if you guys enjoyed this video, and also comment down below on which fact you found the most interesting. I'm always curious to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I've got a lot of cool Nintendo content coming, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero if you ever want to tweet me something or ask me something. I'm always able to reply to everyone on Twitter, so definitely be sure to go and follow me there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.